political talk. Alex Jones on the GCN Radio Network.
We are live at PrisonPlanet.tv, simulcasting the radio show in the television dimension, audio and visual. Thank you for joining us. Congressman Dan Hamburg has still agreed to come on with us today. He's a little bit under the weather, so we're just going to do about 20, 30 minutes with him and then go back to your phone calls and cover all the news. The reason I wanted to have him on is that he wrote some big op-ed pieces in publications like the San Francisco Chronicle detailing PDD 51, the FEMA camps. His analysis was dead on, right in line with ours, and he was worried that this whole apparatus would be passed on after Bush left, because let's face it, presidents have become ceremonial to a great extent. Whereas I would love to believe Obama really was going to fix things. I have children. Whereas I would really love to believe that everything was okay and get happy about equality in our first black president, I'm not here to be suckered or be conned. And I know that he's bringing in the worst of the Clinton people, the worst of the Bush people are staying on. The banker bailout bill gave immunity to the bankers. $8.5 trillion has been stolen, according to multiple publications, Bloomberg, AP, San Francisco Chronicle. And it's been 8 weeks since we learned the new numbers. That was in the first month and a half. They stole over $1.3 trillion. Hard to get your mind around numbers that big. And now they're setting up an open world bank run by the bankers. So the ones that engineered all this, Obama is run by Wall Street. I mean, I said you can't vote for McCain, you can't vote for Obama. But I agree with Dr. Paul Craig Roberts, was a big Reaganite, that he said he was voting for Obama, and I couldn't say he was bad because he said, I have to repudiate George Bush, the torture, the secret arrest, the police state, the lying about wars, the lying about WMD. So he said, I'm voting for Obama. And I said, well, he's going to end up being just as bad. And Robert said, well, probably so, but it's a message to the world. But I said, well, what about after Obama gets in and it all continues? He goes, well, that remains to be seen. He was on a few weeks ago, and he said, Alex, even before he was inaugurated, or right after, he said, I think you were right. Looks like it's just as bad or worse. Because now the people are suckered by the slickness, the intelligence. I mean, Bush was insulting up there, bumbling and stuttering and making up words. Obama, he comes across as genuine. He's cool. He wears his hat backwards and, does the hang 10, surfing stuff. He's slick. He's cool. Well, so are a lot of other psychopaths, silver-tongued. And that's why I'm making the Obama deception. But Congressman Hamburg, I wanted to get you on to go over all of this, and welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Alex. And, I'm a big fan of Paul Craig Roberts. I try to read everything that I see that comes out on the net that he writes. And I have to say that I mostly share your perception. I don't think Obama is a psychopath, but I'd sure like to know what he was doing when he went to work for Business International Corporation after he left Columbia, because there's still something about Barack Obama, and I hate to be a naysayer, because so many of my friends and even colleagues and people I respect are riding this Obama wave, and I don't want to be the skunk at the garden party. But at the same time, you look at so many things that are going on. As you mentioned, the retreads from Clinton, the retreads from Bush, the way this economic crisis is being handled, which seems more like a heist than a stimulus. When you look at the continuation of the extraordinary rendition program, you look at the continuation of camps that, Guantanamo closed it in a year. Well, I think they ought to close it in 24 hours. I don't know why it takes a year. It didn't take a year to open it. It shouldn't take a year to close it. But putting that aside, Bagram Air Force Base, they're doing the same thing there. They're doing in Guantanamo. They're doing the same thing at U.S. military bases in Iraq, which seem to me to still be not enduring bases, as they used to call them, but permanent military installations as part of the American empire. And as I heard pointed out in the media last week, Barack Obama is now in charge of the biggest military machine in the history of the planet by far. He is now the one who has responsibility for the American empire. And he better start acting like he understands the undemocratic and profoundly negative aspect of that. And he doesn't really seem to have any understanding that he is now the ruler of an empire. He is now the ruler of a country that supplies more arms around the world than any other country on the face of the earth and in the history of the planet Earth. And I think this is going to be a pretty limp-wristed administration if what we've seen so far is an indication of what's to come. And I could go on.
Well, Congressman, I want you to, but let me throw in some points here. If you look at what Barack Obama's really doing, he's a slick pitchman, but a military-industrial complex owned by offshore banks that big isn't going to let him get in, isn't going to give him more money than any presidential candidate was ever given, 4 or 5 times, depending which numbers you look at, in Wall Street money than John McCain got. His administration filled with the very bankers that have engineered this collapse, and they're now amassing more power, terrorizing people, saying, give us unlimited power or there'll be a depression. In hindsight, it's doing Obama a favor. And that's the approach I have in the Obama deception of going, look, forget this guy. Look at who's in control. That's who we need to blame. If we always get distracted, and I did this. I pointed out Bush was a distraction. He was evil and horrible. It should be brought to justice. But still, what about those pulling his strings? What about his handlers? Let's look past Barack Obama and George Bush and look at the real power structure, and it's the very same people now filling the ranks. So comment on that, A, and then B on the rendition, the kidnapping. It says, under executive orders issued by Obama recently, the CIA still has the authority to carry out what are known as renditions, secret abductions and transfers of prisoners to countries that cooperate with the United States. So it's a bait and switch. I mean, I've been reading what the legal scholars are saying, even liberals who are kind of halfway wanting to, well, they're going to take them to secret camps. So A, everything's being put on Obama, and I believe it's going to be a trap. They're going to destroy him in the end after he's served his usefulness politically. And then B, still allowing the abductions and taking them to secret client countries?
Well, it's way beyond creepy. And, when you hear the justification from it in the mainstream press led by, the New York Times and the Washington Post, it's, the justification is, well, we have to keep these tools in our national tool bag for fighting terrorism. Well, even people like Chris Matthews on MSNBC are starting to understand that you don't fight a war on terrorism. Terrorism is a tactic. It has nothing to do with an enemy. And when you try to put your finger on who the enemy is, you run into the fact that Al-Qaeda itself is a mythological organization, and to the extent there is an Al-Qaeda, it was created by the CIA. So, I mean, there are so many subterfuges within subterfuges within subterfuges, and you're right. The American people are being hoodwinked. They're being led around like sheep. And for what purpose? Well, it seems like the purpose is the same as it ever was, which is to rob the great majority of us in order to feed the rich. And that's what our economic system has been about for many, many decades, if not a couple of centuries.
Congressman,
until people understand that, I don't see anything really positive happening for the United States of America.
Except we're going to kind of, while we go down the road to hell, they're kind of giving us laughing gas to feel euphoric about Obama, and he says he cares about us, and he says he wants us to, work with him. Going back to an editorial you wrote, I guess about a year and a half ago, about Bush and how the whole apparatus of the police state and the FEMA camps and PDD 51 was all, and John Warner Defense Authorization Act, it was all aimed at us. Now we're seeing it in the news that they're arresting people for marijuana, they're arresting people for talking back on airplanes, they're charging them under the Patriot Act, and it's all continuing under Obama. And he's saying we're going to continue the war on terror, we're going to encircle Russia, we're going to 30,000 more troops to start with in Afghanistan. He's talking about a national draft, 18 to 24. I mean, George Bush could have never gotten away with this, but
Well, it's sort of like what Bill Clinton pulled when he came into office and was able to get all this legislation passed, and everybody said, geez, the Republicans never could have ended welfare. The Republicans never could have gotten NAFTA passed. The Republicans never could have got that crime bill through. So the Democrats, come in and actualize the Republicans, fondest dreams. But Obama, as you said, is a very slick character, and he, it's like having Will Smith as president, and people just can't help but love him, and the wife and the babies, and it's such a pretty picture, and, it's going to suck people along for a while, but, the piper will be paid. And if a year from now this economy is even more cratered than it is now, all of a sudden, it's going to be blaming on the black man.